everyone, happy Halloween 2014. I thought I'd do a paranormal vlog today, a few experiences and what really started me into the paranormal throughout the years. The very first thing that ever happened to me in regards to a weird, unexpected event, and that would have been when I was about 11 years old. And what happened is a group of us kids, we were at the school, we were allowed to do choreography, our own choreography, and we were preparing a dance. We was allowed to go into a room during our lunch hour, and it had like a sunken lounge type floor, so we thought we'd go in there and practice our moves and all our grooves and all the rest of it. And there would have been about 5 or 6 of us. We'd been talking about ghost stories out in the play yard, and we decided to do a seance. Being 11 years old, it was, you know, the thing to do. We all sat around in the circle in that sunken lounge part, the floor that was sort of sunken in, and there was also a projector screen just to our side. It was up on a stand, and you know, we started this seance thinking we knew what we were doing, and while we was holding hands and doing the seance, I happened to look up and I noticed that the projector screen was swaying, and I thought it was just the trick of the eye. I didn't think I was really seeing it, but when I really did look, I noticed it was really starting to move, and I told everyone to quit, move, dive, you know, get out the way, and it did. It actually crashed where we were all sitting underneath, so that sort of freaked us out. We decided not to do any more, but later on that afternoon, when the school bell went, I was leaving. It's like a quadrangle. You've got the buildings in a U shape, and you've got all the asphalt, and I was coming out of one of the classrooms to go home, and all of a sudden there was this massive truck, huge truck, like a Mack truck, and it came, as I walked into the quadrangle, it flew past, went to go fly into me. I was absolutely horrified, terrified. I bolted home thinking this truck nearly ran me over, and the funny thing is, there is absolutely no way, I hadn't even thought straight, there is no way that this truck could even fit in that quadrangle area, let alone have full speed to go flying at me. So I didn't really think about that. I was just absolutely terrified. So I ran home and told my mum about it. Now, as the years went past, I started to question whether this really actually happened, because, you know, you're 11 years old and you get to my age and, you know, things start to fade, and you start to think, well, did I really imagine that? And it was only about, I think it was the year before my mother passed away in 2008. I told her about that, and she recalled and said, oh, I remember that. You came back home from school and said that you'd nearly been hit by a truck, and you were absolutely terrified. And so that in itself, now after all these years, I hadn't mentioned anything about it, and that to me verified what had actually happened. So that's one, probably my first paranormal experience that I can't explain. In my family, it's on my mother's side, where I have dreams that come true. My nana stopped talking about her dreams after one incident, and that was quite a number of years before she passed. She had a dream that her mother-in-law, she was very elderly, she was like in her 90s, and she tripped over a dog rug. Now, my nana thought, well, that's not going to happen because she doesn't own a dog. And it being a 90, she's not about to go and get one. So she didn't worry about it too much. until she got a phone call to say that her mother-in-law had actually passed away. Turns out she had tripped over a dog rug. The reason being why she had a dog in the house is that she was looking after her friend's dog at the time, and she tripped over it, she fell, and she broke her hip, and unfortunately she passed away in hospital not long after that. So she stopped talking about her dreams after that. It was just too much of a shock. I remember when I was probably in my first year high school, and I was at a swimming centre, and I remember thinking, oh, deja vu, I've dreamt this before, I've been here before, I've done this before. It was so overwhelming for me, I actually passed out. So that was all relatively new to me. I was living in Sydney, 17 years old, everybody was asleep. I could hear footsteps coming down the hallway, and I kept looking and there was nobody there. But I had this overwhelming feeling that somebody else was there. Someone was in my doorway watching, and it scared the crap out of me. So I went to go and investigate, and there was nobody up, there was nobody awake. So I decided I couldn't sleep in my bedroom anymore. I went into the lounge room and lie down on the sofa there to go to sleep, and I had the lights on. I had a cat, and his name was Puss. As soon as I'd start to drift off to sleep, I would hear footsteps, and you can hear footsteps on the carpet. And as the footsteps were coming through, it's like a dining room area, and it was walking through to the lounge room where I was lying, I noticed that the cat was backing up, and the ears were back, and he was backing up, and he was, and I looked, and there was no one there. Well, I drifted off to sleep again, and the same thing happened. I could hear these footsteps coming through, the same situation, coming through the dining room through to the lounge room. And again, the cat was backing up, walking backwards with his ears back, and whatever was there that I couldn't see. At that point, I was really starting to get scared, and I got up and walked down the hallway to see if anyone was actually up at that point in time, and there was no one. It did it for the third time, and I don't think I got much sleep that night. So that freaked me out. Now that I've told you that little story, I forgot to tell you that I also did a Ouija board session probably a couple of weeks before that happened in the lounge room. I had one of my closest friends, and this was in the same house, and one of her friends, and we didn't have an actual Ouija board. We just had, we drew pieces of paper with the alphabet on it, and a yes and no, and a glass. And so we decided to do a session. We didn't know what we were doing. We just sort of knew that you have alphabet and that sort of thing, and left it at that. So we sat around on the floor. It was carpet again. We put the cup in the middle, and we started to ask the questions. And I can't even remember for the life of me what questions we asked. But I do remember the cup moving, and it was on carpet. There is no way known that that could move, even with our hands on it, if somebody was pushing it, because it would have just gripped and toppled over, but it didn't. It moved, and it was gliding on the carpet, and that freaked us out so much that we decided to stop at that point. What I didn't know at the time is that you're not supposed to tip over the cup or anything like that. You're supposed to empty it. This is what I've heard. I'm not too sure. I'm not an expert in Ouija boards. But you're supposed to actually put the cup still upside down and take it outside and release it. We didn't do that. We knocked it over and freaked out, as teenagers usually do. And I've never touched a Ouija board since. I am thinking of investing in one now that I've had a little bit more experience with investigating, and I'm still very hesitant because it's not just myself that lives here. I live here with my children, so we'll wait and see where that goes. In regards to these dreams, again, there was two incidents that were pretty major. I usually get these dreams when there's going to be a major event in my life, and it's usually about 8 to 10 months before this event occurs. And one instance was when I had a dream about my who's now my ex-partner, and he'd had an affair, and I was so hysterical. It was this overwhelming feeling of betrayal, but it wasn't so much that he actually did do that. It was the fact that there was no remorse. It was just extremely distressing. So anyway, I told him about it, and I was sobbing, and I made him promise he would never, ever, ever do that to me. And a drunk call walked in on him having an affair 8 months later, and yes, it was the ultimate betrayal, but the distressing part was the fact that there was no remorse. There was a time before that, another dream where I was carrying twins. These are significant events in my life that are about to happen. And I was pregnant with twins. I didn't know I was pregnant with twins. I was only 2 months pregnant. And I had such a terrible dream. It wasn't a dream that was extremely scary, and I really couldn't make sense of it, but I was very distressed in it. And in this dream, I'd woken up in the dream saying to my husband at the time, you know, where are they? Where are they? Because I wasn't pregnant anymore. And he said, don't you remember? And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, well, you've had them, but they weren't there. And so in this dream, it was kind of like a premonition that I was carrying twins. I had no idea I was carrying twins at the time. I was only 2 months pregnant. And but it was the fact that they weren't there, but I don't really remember what happened. So about 8 months later, which is the term of a 10-month, I know they say 9 months pregnancy, but it's actually a 10-month pregnancy, I lost the twins at full term. And of course, I knew I was having twins at that point, but I was in a very long labour. So I do remember it, so I don't, maybe it was the way my dream was just telling me, it wasn't going to tell me everything, but they weren't going to be there at the end of it. So I didn't really click onto that dream that I'd had until probably about 6 months later. And then I remembered that I'd had that dream, and it was really quite distressing. And I know that probably doesn't make sense to a lot of people, because you would probably remember something like that, but I don't know, I just didn't put 2 and 2 together, and it wasn't until a long time after, I guess, the grieving process and things like that. So yeah, that's my first experiences. The main reason why I got into the paranormal field of investigating spirits, ghosts, is back in 2006, oh yes, I've got another story for you. 2006, I ended up staying in a refuge. I had to leave a domestic violent relationship, and while I was there, I caught my first EVPs. It was a little child. I actually bought the voice recorder for recording phone calls to my children from my ex-partner, and I was testing it out, and there was nobody else in that unit I was in. The kids were playing downstairs, way downstairs. There's about 2 staircases down. I was testing it out. I was saying boo, boo, and I had this little, it was like it was right next to me, and this little child saying hello. Well, I just about threw the voice recorder across the room. That shocked me. I wasn't expecting that. And then later on we decided with my next door neighbour in the unit across the way to do another EVP session while the kids were all asleep in the lounge room. Now there was one room I could not stand going in there. If I had to go in there, it would be just to put some clothes in the drawer and take off. And I put the voice recorder down, and I don't have this voice recording anymore because this was done on an old voice recorder and it wasn't digital. Yeah, so we actually left that voice recorder in that room, and you could hear us in the background in the kitchen at the other end of the unit making coffee. And what happened at that point was we let it run for a little while. When we played it back, you could hear this, it sounded like a woman's voice. It was straight into the voice recorder. There was no one at that end of the units at all, and you could hear this and then you'd hear it again, like a sigh, and it happened 3 times into that voice recorder right next to it, and it was like a mournful sigh. Why they would sigh, I don't know. Obviously it was a refuge unit, so I don't know what could have happened either in the units before it became a refuge. It could have been the energies that were left behind from previous tenants that were there because of the refuge. I don't know. And that freaked us out as well. So that was my first taste of EVPs as such, of actually capturing them. But I have a really interesting story that I'd like to finish up with. And it's about our loved ones who seem to know and leave their little signs after they've passed. My mother, she passed away from diabetes, kidney failure, septicemia. She had Parkinson's disease as well. So, you know, she had quite a lot happening. But what ultimately killed her in the end was the septicemia, and because she had diabetes and her kidneys were failing, the antibiotics couldn't help her. So she became extremely thirsty when her kidneys stopped working, and she couldn't drink, because all that was going to happen was all the fluid would just build up in her body and she'd swell. So that was really distressing to see her, because she just wanted to drink, and she did get quite a bit to drink during that time, and it was really naughty. Someone was feeding her a lot of fluid, so she did build up a lot of that fluid. So when she got put into palliative care, we took turns in the family as to who was going to be with her during her final moments, and I experienced my very first panic attack the night before, and I ended up in hospital at the same time as my mother because of this panic attack, because I didn't really know what was going on, and I couldn't breathe, I couldn't swallow. It was like the inside of my throat had actually swelled right up. Anyway, it was my turn that next morning, so I hadn't left the hospital, I was still there. It was my turn to be able to spend time with her, and I had a feeling it was not far away, and I was extremely tired, so I lied down next to her in the chair alongside her bed, and I was holding her hand. I was so fortunate to be able to tell her how much we loved her, how much we appreciated everything she'd sacrificed in her life for us. We're going to be fine, but it's time, you know, it's okay to go now. And I told her that I knew there were so many things that she would want to say, but she can't tell us right now, being in palliative care. She wasn't able to speak. And as I'm telling her these things, you could see her eyes just starting to tear up. So I knew at that point that she could hear me, and I was very fortunate that I had that opportunity to be able to talk to her before she passed. So I lied down next to her and I held her hand while I had her sleep, and I was awoken very quickly by this sensation in my hand. It was like a static energy going through my hand, and it was a really weird feeling, and it woke me up really quickly, and I got up and I checked her and she'd just passed away. I think I was only asleep for probably about 10 minutes. I think at that point, because she knew that she could go, I'd said my final words to her and everything. So it was weird that I got that feeling, and it was like her way of the energy passing through and letting me know that she has gone. And anyway, after I'd notified family and we'd said our goodbyes and that sort of thing, I was supposed to meet my brother and my sister back at Mum's place, and the darndest thing, I'm already at the house and I'm thinking, gee, they're taking an awfully long time. What the hell's going on? And they finally turned up, and my brother's car, which had never broken down before, had never had any problems, decided on the way home that it was going to drop all its water. So everything, it lost all its water. They had to get a tow back, and it was almost like Mum saying, hey, I'm okay now, but this is what you get, because I finally released all the water, but I've done it in the car. So with that said, I also used to collect bees, you know, like character bees and ornament bees and everything bees. And while we were pulling her flowers out of the car, this bee came flying out of the flowers that were in the car that we brought back from the hospital. Now, my brother said that he'd actually seen a bee in the car probably about a week before, and it's still been there, but it would have died in there because of the heat. We're talking about summer in Australia here, so yeah, the heat would have killed it within a couple of days, if not within the first day. And a bee flew out of the flowers, so that was almost another sign for me. You know, I relate to that. Now, when my sister walked into the house and she went to the fridge to get something to eat and drink, there was seafood in there, there was prawns in there, being close to Christmas. Mum loved her seafood, and nobody touches her seafood if it's in the fridge and she's bought it for herself. And Caroline actually wanted to pull some prawns out. She went to go pull some prawns out, and the damn thing flew at her. It literally landed on the floor. She only went to pull some prawns out and it landed on the floor. It was like, you're not having my prawns, thank you very much. So that was the other thing as well. It was just weird how, for example, these cactuses that my mother had had for years and years and years had never bloomed. Within the first week of her passing, the cactus had actually bloomed this most beautiful, huge flower. So, you know, there's a lot of things. Your loved ones are with you in spirit. Please take comfort in that. If you've lost anyone very close to you, they are around you, and they know what happens, and you know, look for the signs because they're always there. You've just got to know what to look for. Now, I have to apologise for the quality of the film, the video. My daughter has gone away to PAX Australia in Melbourne, and she's taken my damn good camera with her, so hopefully I'll have that back soon, all in one piece. It's been good. I'm just about to do a spirit box session, so hopefully I'll have that up very shortly, and we'll see what happens. Happy Halloween 2014. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.